Have you ever had a moment when someone said something in front of others that made you feel small? Maybe it was at a family gathering, maybe at church, or maybe it was something a stranger blurted out in public. You laughed it off politely, but inside, it stung. And long after the moment passed, it stayed with you. You kept replaying it in your mind, wondering what you could have said, what you should have done. If that sounds familiar, you're not alone. So many of us, especially as we get older, carry invisible wounds from these moments of humiliation. They may seem small on the outside, but they can leave a lasting mark on how we see ourselves. As we age, the world sometimes stops listening to us the way it used to. People interrupt, dismiss our stories, or speak over us as if our years don't count. And when that happens, it's easy to internalize it. Easy to think, maybe I don't matter as much anymore. But that isn't true. Not one bit. The problem isn't our worth. The problem is how we've been taught to react to moments that chip away at our dignity. In today's video, we're going to talk about how to handle those moments. How to respond to humiliation without anger, without shame, and instead with calm, strength, and self-respect. We're going to talk about real tools you can use. Ones that don't just protect your dignity in the moment, but help you feel more grounded and confident in everyday life. And we'll do it with help from a philosophy that's been guiding people for over 2,000 years. Now, I know that word might sound a bit heavy or philosophical, but this way of thinking is actually one of the most practical, down-to-earth approaches to emotional strength there is. At its heart, it's about this. You can't control what other people say or do, but you can control how you respond. And in that simple truth lies enormous power. Let me ask you this. Have you ever been in a situation where someone tried to make a joke at your expense? Maybe about your age, your memory, or something personal. And instead of standing up for yourself, you froze. Or you smiled to keep the peace, but felt awful afterward. That's something many of us have experienced. And here's the thing. The pain you felt wasn't just about the words. It was about how powerless you felt in that moment. Like your voice didn't matter. Like you were the punchline in someone else's joke. But here's what this perspective teaches us. You do have power in that moment. You have the power to not give them what they're looking for, to not flinch, to not defend, to not shrink. You have the power to respond with calm. There's a technique I want to share with you. It's simple, but powerful. I call it the calm gaze. Imagine this. You're at dinner with family. Someone makes a smart remark about your appearance or your habits. Everyone chuckles lightly. All eyes turn to you, waiting to see what you'll do. Now you could snap back. You could stay silent and swallow it. But instead, you look at them. Not with anger, not with embarrassment. Just calm. You hold their gaze, steady and quiet. You don't smile, but you don't frown either. You simply look as if to say, I see you, and I'm not moved. That moment, that silence, changes everything. Because you've just shown that you don't need to fight to hold your ground. You've already claimed it, without saying a word. The person who made the joke might fidget or laugh nervously. But you've just sent a message that says, you don't get to define me. It takes practice, of course. Most of us are used to reacting right away, to defend ourselves, to explain, to fight back. But what if the strongest response is the stillest one? True strength isn't loud or showy. It's steady. It's unmoved. And when you meet an insult with stillness, with presence, with quiet confidence, you show that your peace can't be disturbed by someone else's chaos. Now let's take another situation, the kind we all dread. Someone makes a joke at your expense. Maybe it's in a social gathering, and they bring up an embarrassing story from years ago. Everyone laughs. And for a second, you feel like you're 12 years old again, helpless, exposed. But instead of laughing with them or storming out, you look the person in the eye and say gently, would you mind repeating that? It might sound odd at first, but asking someone to repeat an embarrassing joke can be one of the most effective ways to shut it down. Why? Because most of these jokes rely on surprise and momentum. They're thrown out quickly to get a laugh before anyone has time to think. But when you calmly ask them to say it again, you bring attention to it. You make them hear their own words a second time. And often the joke starts to lose its edge. People realize, wait, that wasn't so funny after all. The laughter fades, the room shifts. You haven't argued. You haven't gotten angry. You've simply taken back the moment with grace. I've seen this work firsthand. Once I was at a small reunion, and an old friend decided to share a moment I'd rather forget, something silly I did decades ago. Everyone laughed, and I felt that familiar heat rise to my cheeks. But instead of pretending to laugh or brushing it off, I simply said, "Oh? Can you tell that story again?" It got quiet. He hesitated. And when he started to repeat it, the room didn't laugh. Because the story, stripped of its sparkle, wasn't really that funny. It was just a reminder of someone trying to feel big by making someone else feel small. You see, so often, humiliation is a game of imbalance. One person pushes, hoping you'll fall. But when you don't, when you stay upright, calm, and still, the game ends. There's no victory for them. No reaction to feed on. That's the beauty of this kind of thinking. It doesn't ask you to pretend you don't feel hurt. It simply reminds you that you don't have to act from that hurt. You can pause. You can choose. And in that pause lies your power. These small shifts, a calm gaze, a soft question, they may not seem like much. But over time, they build something much greater. A sense of self-respect that no one can take from you. You begin to trust yourself more. You stop replaying those awkward moments at night. You stop needing to explain or defend who you are, because you know who you are. And that's enough. Let's continue exploring how we can put that into practice in everyday life. How to stay rooted even when the world around us feels shaky. How to use simple techniques to stay emotionally strong without having to fight, and how to protect our dignity, not just in difficult moments, but in every moment. Now let's go a little deeper. Because while holding a calm gaze and asking someone to repeat their joke are both powerful tools, they won't always be enough in every situation. Sometimes the people who try to humiliate us aren't strangers or casual acquaintances. Sometimes they're people we know well, even people we love. And when that happens, the sting cuts deeper. You're not just dealing with a passing remark anymore. You're dealing with a pattern, a relationship that may be quietly eroding your self-respect. It could be a friend who always makes you the butt of their jokes, a family member who criticizes everything from your opinions to your choices in front of others, or someone who constantly reminds you of your mistakes from the past. And when you're older, when you've already given so much of yourself, your energy, your care, your patience, those little digs can feel like betrayals. In these moments, we're given a powerful reminder: we are never obligated to stay in a situation that diminishes us. I want to tell you something that may feel hard to accept, but it's important. You do not have to explain your worth to anyone. Not your siblings, not your adult children, not your friends. If someone in your life repeatedly uses sarcasm, shame, or passive-aggressive remarks to make you feel smaller, that's not just a personality quirk. That's disrespect. And it's okay to step away from it. That brings us to another method I've found incredibly effective: walking away with confidence. Now, I know what you might be thinking. Won't that make me look weak? Won't I seem like I can't handle the moment? Actually, no. Not at all. In fact, calmly walking away from a toxic exchange shows tremendous strength. It tells the other person, and more importantly, it tells yourself, that you value your peace more than you value winning an argument or staying in a hurtful dynamic. You don't need to storm off. You don't need to slam a door or make a dramatic exit. Just a quiet, confident choice to say, I'm not going to sit here and absorb this, and leave the space. That's it. No justification. No guilt. One woman I spoke to, a retired teacher in her 70s, shared a story that stayed with me. For years, her brother would make subtle jokes about her having too much time on her hands, now that she was retired. At every gathering, he'd throw in some comment about her not having a real purpose anymore. At first, she tried to laugh it off. Then she tried to explain how much she volunteered, how busy she kept herself. But the remarks kept coming. Eventually, she stopped trying to educate him. At the next family dinner, when he made the same joke, she looked at him calmly and said, I've heard enough for today. Then she stood up, kissed her niece on the head, and left. She didn't raise her voice. She didn't cry. She simply walked away. And you know what? That was the last time he made that kind of comment to her. Walking away isn't giving up. It's choosing yourself. But there's another method I want to give you. One that works beautifully in social situations, especially when the mood is light and you want to keep it that way. I call it redirection with a neutral question. It's subtle, it's clever, and it completely shifts the conversation without confrontation. Let's say you're at a group lunch. Someone makes a sly comment about how often you forget things these days. It's clearly meant to get a laugh at your expense. Instead of reacting, you smile politely and say, by the way, has anyone tried that new bakery that opened on Main Street? Or, hey, does anyone know if the weather's still nice this weekend? I was thinking of going for a walk down by the lake. Now, it might sound too simple to be effective, but here's what it does. It takes the oxygen out of the moment. It tells everyone that you're not going to engage in that type of humor without scolding or shaming anyone. You've taken back the conversation and you've steered it to safer ground. The person who made the remark is now left with a choice. Either they drop it or they keep pushing and make themselves look unkind in front of others. But 9 times out of 10, they'll drop it. Why? Because you didn't take the bait. You changed the game. This works especially well in family settings, when you want to keep the peace but also hold your boundaries. It keeps the tone warm, but the message clear. You're not here to be anyone's target. You might be thinking, that's easy for someone confident to do, but I get flustered. That's completely understandable. That's why practicing these responses in low-stress situations is so important. It builds your emotional muscle. Just like you'd build physical strength by walking each day, you build inner strength by trying out calm responses in everyday conversations. At the grocery store, with a neighbor, even when you're watching TV and talking back to a fictional character just for fun. These techniques, the calm gaze, repeating the joke, redirection, walking away, they all have one thing in common. They take back your power without hurting anyone else. That's what makes them so wise, so human. They aren't about pretending you don't feel hurt. They're about deciding that hurt won't be the thing that defines your response. And here's the beautiful thing. The more you use them, the more your sense of self-respect deepens. You stop needing to win arguments. You stop needing to explain yourself. You simply live from a place of quiet dignity. It's not cold or distant. It's centered, grounded, rooted in the idea that you deserve peace, not because you've earned it through battle, but because peace is your birthright. You've lived too many years to keep playing games that leave you feeling hollow. You've given too much of your heart to keep handing it to people who don't know how to hold it. This chapter of your life, the one you're in right now, it's yours. And every time you choose calm over conflict, grace over grievance, you're writing it with courage. Let's keep going. There's something quietly powerful about realizing you don't have to match someone's bad energy just because they threw it at you. And the more you practice these calm, intentional responses, the more natural they become. But I want to remind you of something equally important. You're not doing this to impress anyone. You're doing it to honor yourself. You see, as we get older, we're told to just let things go, to keep the peace, to not make waves. But sometimes what we really need is to make peace with ourselves, by no longer allowing other people to chip away at our worth, little by little. Not by yelling, not by demanding respect, but by embodying it. It's not about being emotionless, but about being emotionally strong, knowing when to stand your ground and when to simply walk away. So how do you carry that strength with you, day after day, even when the world tests your patience? You start by choosing where your attention goes. Because the truth is, humiliation can't grow in the light of clarity. When you're clear about who you are, what you've lived through, what you've overcome, and what kind of peace you want in your life, then someone else's opinion or sarcasm starts to look very small in comparison. That's why I often tell people, you don't have to fight for respect. You just have to live in a way that refuses to accept anything less. And that begins in the little things. The tone of your voice when you speak to yourself, the way you carry your shoulders when you enter a room, the choice to pause and breathe instead of immediately reacting. These are quiet decisions, but they build into something real. A new kind of posture, not just physical, but emotional. And here's the beauty of it. When you treat yourself with respect, others begin to notice. Not because you demanded it, but because dignity is contagious. It changes the way you show up in a room. It changes the way you respond when someone tries to get a rise out of you. It even changes the way you remember the past. Because suddenly, you're not carrying shame or regret the same way anymore. You're holding it with perspective. I want to share something powerful someone once wrote. You have power over your mind, not outside events. Realize this, and you will find strength. That's not just philosophy. That's medicine. Especially in a world that seems louder and more opinionated every day. People will say what they say. That part you can't control. But what you can control, what you always have a say in, is how you interpret it, and how you let it shape your next step. Maybe someone close to you has said things that hurt, and they never apologized. Maybe you were publicly criticized or dismissed, and the sting still lingers. Maybe you look back at a time when you didn't stand up for yourself, and now you wish you could go back and rewrite that moment. But let me tell you this, it's never too late to reclaim your dignity. Not with a speech, not with a confrontation, but with presence. You can start today by choosing how you want to carry yourself, not in response to who hurt you, but in service of who you're becoming. The truth is, the strongest people are not those who shout the loudest. They're the ones who can sit quietly in their own presence without needing to prove anything. That's what I hope you'll give yourself permission to do. You don't need to fight every insult. You don't need to correct every misunderstanding. You just need to keep showing up, with your head held high, your heart open, and your peace intact. You've lived enough life to know that not every battle is worth fighting, but some boundaries are worth keeping. And the most important one is the one between your peace and someone else's pain. Because that's often what humiliation is. Someone else's pain, disguised as a joke or a judgment. And you don't have to carry it. So when the moment comes, when someone tries to make you feel small, I hope you'll remember everything we've talked about. That calm is power. That silence can be stronger than any comeback. That walking away isn't weakness, it's wisdom. And that your self-respect isn't up for negotiation. You may not be able to change the world around you, but you can absolutely change the way you move through it. And that, my friend, is how you turn dignity into your daily practice. If this message resonated with you, if you've had moments in your life where you stayed silent when you wanted to speak, or laughed when you wanted to cry, I want you to know you're not alone, and you haven't missed your chance to reclaim your voice. In fact, you're right on time. Take a moment right now to reflect. What would it feel like to walk into your next conversation, whether it's with a friend, a stranger, or even yourself, and do so with the quiet confidence of someone who knows their worth. That's not pride. That's power. And it's yours, if you choose it. If this video helped you, I'd love to hear your thoughts in the comments. Have you ever faced a moment where you were humiliated and chose to handle it with grace? Or maybe you're still learning how, and that's okay too. This is a safe space to share, and your story might just help someone else find their strength again. If you found this message meaningful, don't forget to give the video a like, subscribe to the channel, and tap the notification bell so you never miss a new conversation. Every week, we share tools for emotional resilience, inner peace, and living with wisdom, especially for those of us in life's later chapters. Because the truth is, you're not fading. You're rising. And your voice, your presence, your peace, they all matter more than ever. So here's to you, not just surviving humiliation, but rising above it. Not just keeping quiet, but choosing calm. Not just aging gracefully, but living powerfully. You deserve that. Always have. Always will.